Guys, how's it going? We are live. See lots of folks in the chat already. Starting a couple minutes early here. Just want to make sure that the audio is good and that the levels are good. I'm also streaming at 1440p this time around, which is a little bit higher of a bitrate, or requires higher of a bitrate than I think my internet is typically comfortable with. Internet in Canada here is not the greatest. Certainly not on the West Coast. But yeah, what we're gonna do today is it's gonna get unbelievably hot today, which is unfortunate. But so I'm gonna go as long as I can. But we're gonna do a Q&A session, and I'm just gonna answer the questions that show up in the chat, and then at the end of that, we're gonna do the giveaway. I do want to let you guys know that I'll be pulling the entrance for the giveaway at the end, so it should be open to you guys until around then. So if you haven't entered yet, definitely do so. But we'll still be accepting entrance into the giveaway, over the course of this live stream. But then eventually I'll have to cut it off because I'll need to actually just pull the names. Yeah, I mean, basically, make sure that you are signed up during this at the latest. One other thing I want to let you guys know is that, and by the way, let me know how the audio levels are and how everything is. But one thing I want to let you guys know is that we did make this one open to international entrants, but there are definitely places in the world where giveaways just aren't allowed. So if you are from one of those places, and I don't know what they all are, but if you're from one of those places, if we're just not allowed to send you the thing, we will have to move on to the next person. That's just basically the little disclaimer there, is that regional restrictions still do apply for this giveaway, even though we have opened it up to international ones. So, where it's not legal, we won't be able to legally provide it. I think actually even in the official rules, it gives you a list of countries that are legally eligible for this. Yeah, I think without further ado, let's get into a Q&A session. Again, let me know how the audio levels are. I mean, so far people are saying that it sounds good. Yeah. How do winners get notified if they win? So we will be announcing it. I'll be announcing it on the stream here. Of course, if that person is from somewhere where it's not legally allowed, then yeah, we'll have to just reach out by email to the next person. I'll be doing the giveaway here in approximately an hour and a bit. So yeah, let's get into some Q&A stuff here, guys. Feel free to ask your questions just about anything in general. Usually audio stuff is helpful, but yeah, just feel free to ask your questions. We do have a super chat function in case I miss it, and if you really need that question answered, that's how you can make sure that gets answered. But also don't feel like you have to use it, because I'm going to try and go through as many as I can. So I'm going to start with the first question I see here from Rob Hawk. Nice to see you in the chat. Pricing aside, why might one prefer the Sony Z1R over the Empire Ears Odin? From what I'm told, and actually I have heard the Z1R. The Z1R is... I mean, full disclaimer, I only heard it at a meetup, so I didn't have that much time with it. But the Z1R is the IEM that you get for really good bass quality, but in all other aspects, the Odin I think is better. The Odin has, it's a little bit of an odd. It's not totally correct to say that it's an odd frequency response, because it's generally quite neutral. Quite well balanced, but there is a little bit of I'll keep calling it a little bit of bloom to that 2K region, 1 to 2K region, and there's a little bit of distance there between the upper mids and lower mids, but that just gives a little bit of extra forwardness there to vocals, I find. So I don't really mind that. I kept worrying that maybe it was just like on the edge of like being shouty, but it's really not. Like there was never anything that I listened to where I didn't enjoy it. So there's other stuff where I go, wow, that's really shouty. And the Odin is not like that. So yeah, if you're a, I mean, to be clear, the Odin also has really good bass quality, but I think that the people like the Z1R, for the bass quality, and if you're comparing them side by side, maybe the Z1R's bass is better, but I haven't done that comparison, so I couldn't tell you. Have you ever tried the RAL SR1A? Yeah, I have a review of it, or impressions of it, video on the channel. It was quite detailed. It's funny, actually. I keep seeing RAL's marketing stuff on social media, and then I randomly they I guess used a clip from that review. It's like, oh, wait, that looks like me. Sure enough, it was. So and they're definitely doing a big push for that stuff on social media these days. So, but yeah, it's detailed for sure. The issue is that those ribbon headphones, it's really difficult to achieve any kind of bass response on them. And like if you look at like what happened with the Gold Planar GL1200, it's the bass distortion levels are ridiculously high. By the way, I do have a video coming out on distortion soon, probably next week, because it doesn't mean what people think it means. But yeah, it is still one of the I guess limits there on some of those ribbon driver headphones. And RAL opted to not, the RAL, it just doesn't have much going on for bass, and I think that was probably the right choice given some of the constraints that they had to work with. So, but for the rest of it, actually, it's a little bit forward there again in the upper mids, but it's detailed. The detail there is definitely competitive. So yeah, pretty solid. I liked it. It's a bit awkward to wear, a bit odd with like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, no, it's more comfortable. Not to me, it wasn't. It was actually a little too clampy for me. But yeah, you can kind of do the adjustment thing to kind of get it to be a little bit to fit a little better. And yeah, so of course, if anybody's unaware, we're going to be giving away the HD100S. This is the headphone that I'm wearing right now. I was a little worried because it's getting really hot today, and I have the door closed with the light on, and there's an amplifier on over there. Man, it's going to be hot. Is there a new revision to the Hi-Fi Man Ananda? Not that I'm aware of, but possibly. They're making revisions from what I understand, the revisions were mostly like dust cover related. I did see somebody do a video on the differences between the different revisions of the Arya. Those ones I think are a little more obvious because it looks physically different with the dust cover change. But maybe there's a little bit more going on there, and I'd have to actually, I think actually I have evaluated two different versions of it, but it wasn't that different. The Sundara differences were a little bit more significant. Do you have any thoughts on the new wireless Beats earbuds? Are you reviewing them soon? I was going to. I am not totally sure if I will, but I probably should. It's difficult to do. There's so many like wireless earbuds coming out that it's difficult to do individual videos on each of them. And the Beats one might be a reason to, because it is a fairly popular one, but I prefer to do comparisons there, because otherwise you end up just doing that, and then you kind of miss some of the other stuff that might be a little more interesting. So I don't want to become like, I've been doing a lot of true wireless and noise canceling reviews lately, and I don't want to end up just doing that stuff. So yeah. How does the HD600 compare to how does the HD660 compare against the HD600? I think there's a good argument that is actually in favor of the HD600, because I do think that the 300 ohm 6 series are going to probably scale better than the 150 ohm stuff, which I think the 660 is. But I haven't done the comparison. I only compared it against the 650, which it's a little more clear sounding than the 650, but I do think the 650 is a little more detailed. Please make a comparison between the H800S, ZMF Tour, and Arya. Very good comparison there. I think for frequency response, the winners are Tour and Arya, but I think for like micro detail, I think HD800S is the winner there. But Arya is better for like instrument separation for like busy passages and that kind of stuff, and better bass as well. Whereas the Auteur is kind of like in the middle ground there. I think the Auteur actually has the best overall kind of balance among them. It's the more both the H800S and the Arya, they are a little counterclockwise tilted. Not much. Like they're still well balanced generally. The H800S kind of shifts the upper mid range a little bit to some of the lower treble there. But the shape of the frequency response is basically, it's solid actually. It's funny. A lot of people even say like it measures really well, like surprisingly well. But then for the genres that they like, it's like a too counterclockwise tilted. So this is though the headphone, like this is absolutely a fantastic headphone for like jazz, acoustic, classical, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I think for some maybe less well recorded stuff, it might be a little bit shrill, and that's kind of how I feel about it as well. Whereas the ZMF Tour I think is a little more versatile. The Arya is also a little more in the same vein as the HD800S, where it has that sort of typical hi-fi man like 2K kind of withdrawn quality, but then there's a little more presence there for the ear gain, and then like upper mids, lower treble, and mid treble, and upper treble, like that's all really well harmonically balanced. So which it just gives a little bit more presence there for those genres to certain instruments. So yeah, for me the Auteur is the one that I think is the more versatile, but not as technically impressive as either of the other two. And out of those three, I don't know which one I would choose. I think it just depends on the genres that you prefer. In terms of value and overall sound quality, how would you rank the Hi-Fi Man HE6 SEV2, Arya, and Focal Clear? I don't think you can break it down like that. I don't think there's a linear scale there for sound quality and value, because they're each good at different things. The Arya is really good at space and separation and depth forward. The Clear is less good at those things, but much more good at punch and dynamics and impact. And the HE6 SEV2 is not as good for soundstage and depth as the Arya. Better than it though for punch and impact. A little better than the Arya for timbre, but also not as punchy as the Clear. So it's somewhere in between. The HE6 SEV2, I don't know if I would recommend it at the $1,800 like the default price, but at like $700 or $800 or whatever it was with the Adorama deal, it's absolutely a no-brainer. That I think is fantastic. Have you ever heard a headphone tuned to the diffuse field target that you actually liked? No. Diffuse. So let's just kind of clarify that a little bit. The H800S is not a diffuse field tuned headphone. It's Sennheiser has called it diffuse field loudness equalized, or diffuse field loudness equalization, which is part of their process, which is different from the Hammershoy and Mahler diffuse field target, as far as I understand. And this like term is sort of been co-opted by Sennheiser here. Because an actual diffuse field target, like if you look at what a diffuse field target is, it's a little different than what this headphone is tuned to. In fact, I would actually say that the overall level of ear gain for the H800S is actually a little closer to Harman. And if you guys are unaware, the Harman research initially started with an in-room listening target, which was kind of close to diffuse field, and then they applied their previous, like the 2009 research as a starting point there for where people would then inevitably or eventually adjust bass and treble. And I'm also told that the the spot for that was chosen. Like it's a little bit arbitrary, but still smart. Like they could have just given people, you know, all the sliders in the world, but they just gave them ones that were around where the crossover was for subwoofers in the bass. So that's kind of why you see, you know, that's where the shelf is. But I think that's smart, you know, like I think it makes sense to do that. You have to kind of like, you know, have it be at a certain point. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that diffuse field is going to be the same as, you know, flat measure like you know, flat measuring speakers in a good room. I don't think it's going to be quite the same. You know, I suppose the closest thing to that, to like what, again, I have to be a bit careful here because like actually technical diffuse field stuff, that not that many headphones that out there right now are that. Like the Hammershaw and Mahler stuff is not that. You don't see many headphones that are tuned to that these days. But a lot of headphones that don't have a sub bass shelf, they are, I think, closer to what that initial in-room listening target would have been from the Harman research. And that's kind of close, I suppose, to, because it's basically like a, you know, the B&K optimum target actually is another good example here. I think that's probably a little bit closer to what people would want when they say diffuse field. But something that's actually Hammershaw and Mahler diffuse field, I don't, I can't think of anything right now that, or anything that I've listened to recently that would actually have hit that. And I don't know why anything would. I don't know why there would be a reason to do that anymore. But it gets confusing because the H100S is, again, diffuse field loudness equalized. Did somebody, I see a super chat here. Sorry if I missed that. The chat sometimes will like randomly just like catch up. So you have to bear with me on that. J.E. Cans, thank you. Between the LCD-X and the Arya, which would you choose? Those would be my dollar amount upper limit. Yeah, so good question. And personally, I would probably choose the Arya because I listen to a lot of jazz and acoustic and that kind of stuff. And I really love that depth quality forward. But I can also see why somebody would choose the LCD-X. The build quality is better on the LCD-X. It's easier to drive. And then also it's definitely warmer and maybe a little bit more versatile for certain genres, and it EQs so incredibly well. Like when you EQ an LCD-X, it can sound fantastic. So yeah, my pick would be the Arya, but I think it's going to depend a little bit on whether or not you do EQ, and I EQ the Arya as well, and it can handle it. But you know, I think a lot of it is going to depend on the qualities that you're after and the genres that you like. But for, you know, the stuff that I like, the Arya I think is the one that suits me a little better. Now I have to skip back up to where I was. Thank you for that question, though, by the way, and thank you for the diffuse field question, because that's a very good question. I haven't heard the Matrix Mini. I'd like to, though. I like what Matrix Audio does typically. So. Okay, this is an excellent question from Delta Dika. If you had to run over a flagship headphone with a Jeep that isn't the Abyss, what do you pick? The question, I have to like qualify that a little bit. If it's to run over a headphone with a Jeep where the headphone still survives, I think it would probably be that Final Audio D8000 Pro that's like right there, because that might. Don't do it. Please don't do it. But that's the only one that I think would probably survive. But if the question is to run over it and break it because, you know, it shouldn't exist, probably that Ultrasone Edition 15, I think. Although that actually had really good build quality as well. but it was more, ergonomically good. But that's a good question. What do you think are the headphones with a really good center image? Um, Actually, surprisingly, the Arya is pretty good for that. It's got really good depth forward. Um, and it's one of the few planars that actually is. I mean, typically planars aren't as good for that. But good center image. I can't really recommend this headphone, but it does have a good center image, and it is the Bayer Dynamic DT1990. And a lot of those Bayers, they typically do have good center image, but I can't really recommend them because the frequency response on those is just too silly. Um, but yeah, it does. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that would have a good. I mean, that's actually the downside with headphones in general. You typically don't get very good center image because they're coupled to the side of the head, and in-head localization is kind of a tricky thing. So it's something where I mean, yeah, you can do stuff to like angle the drivers and make sure it's coming from a position that's like here rather than like here. You can do a few things there, but I don't think it's like, perfect. You're hearing two voice feeds. Can someone confirm? That might be just on your end. Uh, how about reviewing some vintage gear? That'd be fun. Slow mode to chat. That's a good idea, but then I'll miss I'll miss some stuff. Uh, yeah, I don't want to miss stuff. Otherwise, I would. But I suppose inevitably I have to because we're going way too fast here. The main thing is I don't want to miss any of the super chats because that's important to get. Oh, Zeus did a review of the new Ananda. Maybe there is. I haven't had a chance yet. So we'll see. But I mean, actually, it's a good point because it kind of goes along with that change to the Odyssey headphones and the question about model revisions and stuff like that. And it seems like companies often have a different approach to that. Hi-Fi Man and Sennheiser and a lot of these other companies will make silent revisions where they don't make a Mark II. Well, they do make Mark II or an SE in some cases, but then in other cases they don't because they don't feel that the change is significant enough to warrant a model change. But oftentimes doing these insignificant things can have a fairly significant impact on the overall sound quality. But that gets tricky because what do you do with the old ones, right? If especially the ones that are already out there, and there's stock at various different places. So I understand that creates problems, and it's a difficult thing to navigate. So it makes sense why they wouldn't want to make a version 2. Then there's companies like Odyssey where they make changes. And the changes are much more significant and much more drastic. And this is a case where I think they should just do the model years approach. Like, don't get me wrong, I like that they're doing the changes. I think that they've improved things, and that's something they should keep doing. But I think they should just do model years because at this point, that's how everybody's sort of treating it, anyways. I would love to see a 2022 LCDX, for example. And then maybe the 2021 version gets discounted a little bit, but that's okay. It's still good. DT1990 Pro versus Sundara. Sundara, easily. LCD-X versus HD100S. Very different. Planar versus dynamic, for starters. So the LCD-X actually is going to... The HD100S is good at instrument separation because it is so spacious as well. So it's not as straightforward as just saying LCD-X has better instrument separation, because planars typically do. But in this case, it's not that straightforward. And also, I find that the LCD-X is more... It's more about that sort of just micro detail and micro dynamics, trailing ends of tones and that kind of stuff. Yeah, the LCD-X for certain genres, because it's warmer, and also handles that bass EQ exceptionally well. So if you see yourself wanting to boost the bass, the LCD-X is the one to go for there, because the HD100S, it doesn't really EQ as well for the bass. So yeah, I would say LCD-X if that's your priority. But if you don't want to EQ stuff and you listen to jazz and acoustic and that kind of stuff, classical, then the HD100S probably. Or if you're looking for a really wide, spacious presentation, HD100S. What about Dan Clark? Voce? No, I haven't heard it. A lot of people I trust don't like it, so I don't. It's not something that's on my radar. But maybe this is the thing, actually, is another example. What DCA does, which is pretty cool, is they'll release a headphone and then they'll release different pads that change the tuning for that headphone later on. And so for people who are like, oh, I want some different kind of sound flavor, or maybe it's not neutral enough, then they'll have new pads that you can get. Now it sucks that you have to pay money for that, but it's nice that they provide that. So maybe there's some new pads for the Voce that people haven't heard. I don't know. I don't know anything about that. Don't take that as like that's what's happening, because I definitely don't know. But they have done that kind of stuff in the past. Tridev, thank you. Do you have a question? If you do, I don't see it. Oh, you want to meet me? Go to CanJam. I think I'll be going. I should be going. But thank you. HD100S versus the Headphone. That's a good one. Man, because they're both quite wide. The Headphone has better tactility and I hesitate to call it macro dynamics or like macro contrast, because it's not punchy or slammy, but it has a physicality to it that nothing else does, and that draws your attention in very unique ways. So I don't really have a very straightforward answer there. That's a tough one. The thing is, I would probably gravitate more towards the HD100S because it's so much more comfortable. Like the weight of the headphone is the thing that is a bit of a deal breaker for me. But for sound quality, I actually think I prefer the headphone. So if you can handle the weight, then it's a good choice there. M. Adams, thank you. I have an Arya paired with a Lear and an A90. Looking for another headphone to complement my setup. I listen to a wide variety of music. I would go with a dynamic driver headphone because you already have a planar. So look at the stuff like the ZMF Tour or Focal Clear, something maybe a little warmer as well. So that's why I think the ZMF thing is a good option there. Maybe an Aeolus. So yeah, I would look at those. Trying to think if there's anything else that I would suggest in that price range. Aeolus or Clear, something like that. If you want the detail, you go with the Clear. If you want timbre, probably Aeolus or Tour. Yeah, we're doing a giveaway stream. A90 Ant? What is that? What is that at? Is A90 a good combo with SMSL SU9 DAC? A90 is not a good amplifier. That is a hill I will die on. I know DMS likes it. No, I'm sorry. It This is okay. Think about what I'm going to do a video on this because a lot of people bought that amplifier and a lot of people think it's good because of how well it scores on a particular index. And I'm going to do a video soon that explains why that index is not actually as useful as people think, or it doesn't mean what people think it means, what most people think it means. But here's the problem with the A90. Say what you want about sound quality, because I actually think it's quite sterile and mushy, and even just when you compare it to other similarly priced amplifiers, it just does not compete. I mean, bear in mind that all of this is like, we're talking about very small differences, but the differences in that case are significant enough to where I would never use the A90 if I had another similarly priced amplifier there, like the Rebel amp, an IHA6, honestly, even a THX amp. Just trying to think. There's probably an SPL amp in that price range. Like, there's a lot of amps that I would choose over the A90 for sound quality. But even if you disregard the sound quality, think about what an amplifier is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to amplify the sound. Now, I am of the opinion that an amplifier an amplifier can just give you more volume, but it can also make things engaging in one way or another way, and it can very subtly change and potentially improve and draw your attention in unique ways. The A90 does none of that, but here's the problem. Even if it just was the kind of thing that amplified the signal, which I don't think that's the only thing. I actually think it mushifies the signal or the sound compared to other stuff. It also has ground loop issues, and so if you have it, if one of its core functions, specifically RCA and a USB DAC, gives you noise floor, then that's a problem. Sure, you can run it with a balanced DAC, and then that problem goes away completely. It's not an issue. In many setups, if you run it with optical and RCA, not a problem at all. But I think about, like, how many people are in a situation where they don't have a balanced DAC. They have just RCAs, and that's one of the options. That's one of the core functions of that amplifier, and it's just totally unusable. I just think that, like, come on, like, even if you think if you totally swallowed the Kool-Aid on that particular index and things measuring better than other things, and that being better because it gives you confidence, even if you think that, it still has the ground loop issue, which is just not excusable in my opinion. So and at around that price, it's there's so many other better sounding amplifiers, more engaging sounding amplifiers. I think the best way to put it is the way that Android put it in his review, which I encourage everybody to read, because I haven't done a full review, and I might, but like it would be more of a comparison if I do it. If you read Android's review of the A90, he's nice in the sense that, which is important, in the sense that some people may be looking for this kind of sound, but it is definitely on the sterile side of things, and I would describe it exactly the same way. It's totally fine if, like, for example, if you like the A90 and you're hearing me say this and you're like upset by me saying that I don't like it, screw what I say, right? If you like it, that's fine. But that my description of the sound there, and Android's description of the sound there, that's in contrast to other amplifiers around that price, it is much more sterile sounding. So I like to make the joke that it makes me want to put rocks in my pockets and walk into the ocean, because what's the point of even living life after hearing that amplifier? But that's obviously hyperbole, because it's not like, it's just too sterile compared to other amplifiers. And if you like that sterile kind of sound, then that's fine. I just don't. And I'm also not the only, we are not the only ones who have this opinion of it. I know Max Settings thinks it's the worst amplifier he's ever heard. I wouldn't go that far. I've heard quite a bit worse. I don't know where I put it. I have it around here somewhere. But I have something here that's considerably worse. So it's not the worst amplifier out there, but it's not as engaging sounding at that price. And now we're going to get into all kinds of debate about. I opened Pandora's box here with the A90, but not for me. The Viking, thank you. What you still think Stax L700 Mark One? What you think Stax L700 Mark One versus Arya? I couldn't tell you about the Stax L700 Mark One. I can tell you about the Stax SR007 2.9. I think the SR007 2.9 is better than the Arya. Well, at least for detail and all that stuff. I need to get one in so I can do measurements and actually spend more time with it, because I only heard it at a show, and that's not fair. But the detail, man, it's there on the Stax SR007 2.9. The L700, I looked at the frequency response. I haven't heard it yet, so I can't really pass judgment. From what I saw from the frequency response, it's pretty weird. But what I'd be curious about, and I've been told that eStats do really well with EQ. I'd love to try getting one of those in and then EQing it, because I'd be really curious to see. But yeah, Metal told me that they do exceptionally well with EQ, so it's worth trying. When people say Class A amps have a larger soundstage, how significant is that? Do you need to A/B test side by side to tell the difference? For example, A90 versus Soloist 3. I need to get a Soloist 3X in, because a lot of people keep talking about it and saying how they love it, and it's more like engaging or dynamic. But then I've heard other reports where people don't like it as much. They say it's too warm. I don't know. I need to get one in, because I couldn't tell you really between those two, because I haven't done that comparison. But and also I couldn't tell you about the Class A amps giving a larger soundstage, because I don't know if that's the case. What I can say though is, if you compare some amps that I consider to be just flat out bad sounding amplifiers, not like the A90 is a good enough sound, as far as it doesn't sound like claustrophobic or like mono, right? When there are bad amplifiers out there that sound like particularly mono and tight and claustrophobic, that's a totally different thing from something like an A90 or solo, or other Class A amplifiers, because you can have amplifiers that are not Class A. You can have that still are totally fine for soundstage. So I don't really think I wouldn't frame it in those terms, because I don't think it's about that. It's more just, you take a FIO E10K and compare that against any good enough amplifier, even a THX AAA1, and you notice that the soundstage is correct on the good enough amplifiers, and it's just not correct on the FIO E10K or the Catus Tone 2 Pro or something like that, where it's just basically just a bunch of op amps thrown onto a circuit, and it's not enough. It's not good enough. But that's where I think that distinction lies, right? When we're talking about an A90 versus a Soloist 3, I think those differences are going to be much less significant. How do you feel about the Beyerdynamic DT990 Pro at $160 versus the 6XX versus the HE5XX? Basically, I have drop credits that will expire. I own the Focal Clear MG Pro. Wow. None of those. Okay. The only one of those headphones I think is actually a great headphone, and that's the HD6XX. The DT990 Pro is something that that's intolerable to listen to until you've put, I don't know, a certain amount of hours on it for pad wear. You just maybe wear the pads out artificially on like a box or something, but it's just full of treble peaks. It sounds horrible. And people say, oh yeah, it smooths out over time. I'm sure it does. I'm just not willing to, get a pair of headphones that I can't listen to, before six months of use. And then the HE5XX is the Deva, and the Deva was interesting as a wireless headphone in my opinion. I just don't think that it's at all competitive at $200 as a wired headphone. So I would say categorically low res, but just it's not bad for its frequency response though. It's actually totally fine for its frequency response. It's just not special for its detail. I actually think what they did with the HE400 SE was better, and the HEX4 is better than the HE5XX for sure. I know that's a bit spicy. A lot of people don't agree with that, but I think it's not close. Like the HEX4 is better for its frequency response, slightly. It's worse in some areas, but better in many others. But then and it has similar technical performance. So if you're okay with the HE5XX's technical performance, I don't know why you wouldn't just get the HEX4. That's just sort of my opinion on that. It's cheaper, right? But I think out of all of those, the only good one is the 6XX, because that actually is legitimately detailed off of higher end. Like it scales. Yeah. A lot of good questions here. Man, it's starting to get real hot. Rob Hawk, thank you. Man, you are such an awesome participant and contributor. Feel free to hit me up anytime, man. Will Naguyan, thank you. Here's a cup of coffee to enjoy your stream. Thank you. Actually, I do want to let you guys know, it doesn't buy me coffee. What it does is it allows us to, we put it into a fund, we set it aside, and it allows us to send people to shows or fly precog vision up here to visit us or something like that. We put it into a fund that then we use to do a big thing that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So it's basically, the whole point of it is that it feeds more. It feeds into the content side of stuff. So it's just more varied stuff for you guys. Plex, thank you. How do I get rid of my THX 789 as soon as possible? You don't need to. I don't have any issues with that. Like, some people don't like that THX stuff. I think it's fine. Like, I get it when people say that that's a little bit like artificially enhanced there in the highs and it kind of fakes detail. Okay, sure, but it's got lots of power for pretty cheap. So it's definitely one of those good enough amplifiers. So I don't think you need to get rid of it. It's not the best sounding thing. I personally would probably take that Phonitor 1D over the 789, but the 789, like I'm actually using the THX AAA1 right here, and I don't have any issues with it. Like, it's not engaging compared to a Rebel amp or something like that, but that's okay. It's totally fine. It's definitely one of the good enough options, and if you want that balanced with more power, then the 789 gives you that, and it's cheap, so why not? Marius, yeah, good to see you, Marius. Would Phonitor 2 be able to drive HiFiMan HE6 SEV2? I don't know about the Phonitor 2. But one thing to keep in mind, I actually don't recommend the SPL Phonitor stuff for inefficient planars like those. For a few reasons. I mainly recommend the Phonitor stuff for high impedance dynamic driver headphones. I think that's the way to go there. As far as does it have enough power, like the Phonitor X, I believe it would, but there's some weird behavior with those Phonitor amps as far as like they do this thing where they try and get it to be as consistent as possible for every load that it sees, and with some of these planners, they're really low impedance, and so that means that I can see a situation where it wouldn't actually be giving it enough power. And so, for example, with the head audio headphone, I did not enjoy it as much out of the Phonitor as I did out of the IHA6, that's more meant for inefficient planars and things like that, even though the headphone's AMT, not a planar, but you get the idea, right? There are some that are meant for high current output, and I think the Phonitor is more voltage based than that. So if you're looking for an amp for the HE6 SE, I probably wouldn't look into the Phonitor stuff. The Soloist can drive it. I need to try. I need to get that one in because people keep talking about it, so it's pretty cool. Let's see. gotta find my place again. I'm sure I missed your questions. If I missed your questions, like feel free to ask them again. Um, we got 650 people in here now, so it's it's tough. I love the detail, but the DT 1990 was way too much for me in the treble. I assume head headphones, clears, or something else in that range. Um, yeah, I think the clear is just way more detailed than the DT 1990. Head to phone as well, but it's a totally different thing. Um, I think there the question is going to be about comfort. If you can handle the weight of the headphone, I think that's the better sounding thing. Um, but the clear is a much more normal headphone. So I think that's it depends. Clear is also a lot less expensive. Like the clear is $990. The head-to-phone is quite a bit more expensive than that. Do planar headphones sound bigger than dynamic headphones having bigger drivers? Okay, it depends what you mean by bigger, because bigger can be a lot of things. If you just tweak some stuff in the frequency response, you can give something a concert hall effect, right? Especially if you add a bunch of bloom there. Um, no. So driver size. So the largest planar drivers are the hi-fi man ones, like the ones on the like this stuff here. These are if you guys can see this, it's good. These are truly enormous drivers in here. And so driver size in planars, it gives you a particular parameter to play with. That the larger, this is what I'm told at least, the larger the diaphragm, the more you can do with bass extension. Now, there's other ways to achieve bass extension as well, which would be basically adding mass. So you could increase the thickness, or you could reduce the thickness. Increasing the thickness would mean more mass, which would mean more low end. Like it would kind of shift the resonance frequency down. But you can also do that by having a larger diaphragm, and then this would allow you to make it thinner, and then that would give you potentially more high frequency stuff. So if you go too hard one way or the other, you're gonna lose out a little bit. There's always going to be a trade-off there. So really, the way I see it is that driver size in a planar, or diaphragm size in a planar, really just it's really just one additional parameter that it allows you to change certain things about bass and treble. And the question that I'm hopeful to answer in just learning more about planars, because we're doing some educational stuff here, so I'm actually researching this a lot. The question I'm hopeful to answer there is are there any downsides to just having larger diaphragms? Because then you would be able to, and maybe there are, if I think about like examples, as much as the Hi-Fi Arya and HE1000 and all that stuff, they're detailed, they have good soundstage, they have good depth, and they have a very refined frequency response. Things are generally good there. They're able to achieve good bass extension and also good treble extension, right? And it doesn't, like the resonance frequency on those is ridiculously low. And that's because of the driver size. It's because of the diaphragm size. But they're not the greatest for their macro contrast. So the question I would have is, well, is that one of the trade-offs? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It could also be that the trade-off there for the reason why the macro contrast isn't as good is because of the way that it's worn on the head and the fact that they kind of like protrude down past your jaw a little bit. That might be why. But it could also be an entirely different property that we haven't figured out yet. Because if you think about headphones that have really good macro contrast, like planars that have really good macro contrast, it's stuff that's like the HE6, the original. the stuff that's at least in Hi-Fi Man's case, the rounder ones typically have better, like the macro contrast, and those ones have smaller diaphragms than the HE1000 and the Arya. And if you think about that, they have smaller diaphragms. In the case of the HE6, it also has a really low resonance frequency. So they achieved that low resonance frequency in a different way than the Arya did. They achieved it without having. I mean, it's still a large diaphragm there. Don't get me wrong; it's still one on the larger side. But yeah, they achieved it in a different way. Yeah, I'm getting all kinds of pings. So I maybe that doesn't answer your question there, but no, there's no necessary, or there's no like larger drivers are or versus smaller drivers. That doesn't it doesn't entail a particular aspect of sound quality, but it does. It is one parameter that can potentially constrain certain things, depending on what else is engineered for. Chet, thank you. Opinions on the shit Jotunheim 2? I don't have any opinions because I don't have one in, and I haven't heard it. So now I have heard the Jotunheim R. That's with the RAL. Or wait, is it the R? No, Jotunheim. Well, yeah, it's the thing that they made for the RAL. I have heard that, but that's not technically the same as just the Jotunheim 2. So no, I don't have any opinions on that. Zan, is there any open back with tuning similar to the Blessing 2? Sorry, yeah, I'm catching up here, guys. Is there any open back similar to the Blessing 2 for its frequency response? Huh. Think about that. Kind of the Focal Clear. Kind of. I say that because, you know, if I think about the Blessing 2, it's fairly neutral. And the Clear is also fairly neutral. I hesitate to say something like a Sundara or an HD 600 because those are also both fairly neutral. The reason why is because the bass on the Sundara is mostly linear. I know the sub bass drops off a little bit, but like it's mostly linear. And on the HD 600 it rolls off a bit. And on the Blessing 2, because it's an in-ear, it kind of, you know, especially with the Blessing 2 Dusk, you get a little bit more of a bass shelf there. So that's why I say Focal Clear, because the Clear kind of also has a little bit of that mid bass that the other ones don't. But yeah, something like the Clear, I guess. Sorry, I saw another question here that got. You totally agree about the A90? Mushify? I shouldn't dunk on it too hard because I don't want people to think that it's. I don't want people to think that it's not one of the good enough sources for sound. But if you think about it, at that price, it's not good enough. That's my opinion. Like, it's definitely doing nothing. Like, it just keeps getting worse and worse. If you compare it to other amplifiers around that price, there is more engaging stuff out there. Absolutely. That's basically the complaint that I have with it. And then the ground loop issues. And if I think about, well, I don't know why I would get an A90 over a topping EX5 if I wanted it to do nothing. If I liked that kind of sterile sound, other than the A90 has more power, right? That's really the only reason. I've tried chasing Syned previously. Really did not enjoy the sound. Always sounded so flat and boring. That's what I'm telling you here, guys. I mean, the A90 kind of made everything sound mushy to me. And I tried it with the Matrix X Saber Pro. No, wait. I didn't try with the X Saber Pro. I tried it with the SMSL SU9 with a different ES 903 Q2M, which is not the ES 938 Pro. They are a little different. But, that combo with the SU9, I love the SU9. I think it's fantastic. And the EX5, I also am going to recommend, even though it has that same, the amp output has that same sterile kind of sound as the A90. The reason being is because at $350, whatever that comes in at on the EX5, that's okay. That's totally fine. And the DAC there is just as good as the Sonko's LEQ-XD1 and the SMSL SU9. So it's really ridiculous value. I will do a video soon on the objectivist versus subjectivist thing because it's interesting. But the short story on that is that I would be an objectivist if I could confidently draw a straight line between the measured results and my experiences, and when it comes to amps and sources and stuff like that, I can't yet. And also with frequency response, I can draw a straight line between frequency response and a part of my experience with headphones, but there's a lot that's still missing there for me. And until we analyze data in terms of those things, I don't think we're there yet. And that's why I am not, it's basically I'm not yet an objectivist. And the more I learn, the more I'm able to then correlate to these experiences, and the more I'm able to correlate, the more confident I would be about saying this contributes to that. But right now I'm not there, and I don't think we are there collectively as a community yet either. I know there's people who think that frequency response is all there is, and maybe that's true, but until we start analyzing frequency response in terms of these other things, I don't think that we can confidently say that that's all there is. Lee, thank you. What IEM do you recommend at the $200 price range? $200. Good question. This might be something for FC Construct. He writes for us on the website, because I know he's done a lot. He's got a lot more experience with some of the chi-fi stuff that I haven't had a chance to hear. But I've tried a few IEMs around the $200 price range, and I haven't really found anything that has captured my interest that much. That would make me go, yeah, this is good enough where I don't need to save up the extra $100 and get the Blessing 2. That's kind of how I feel about it. Instead of spending $200, I would save the extra money and just get the Blessing 2, because the Blessing 2 is just so much better than everything else in that, or Dusk, Blessing 2 Dusk, right? One of the two there. I think it's just so much better. I would look potentially into one of the Audio IEMs around that price, one of the legacies. I can't remember which one it is. Those are decent. I didn't like the Legacy 2. The frequency response is great, but it's pretty bad for its overall technical performance. The Audio Yume is another one that I haven't heard it, but people like it. Just trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I would look into some of those Audio Legacy IEMs. Or also, wait, isn't the Etymotic ER, one of the Etymotic ER2 XR whatever around that price? If that's the case, check and see if you can handle the ear insertion style of the Etymotic stuff, because for sound quality, that's probably going to be your best bet at that price. All right, guys, I'm going to wind down the Q&A session here. I'm going to answer all the super chats here because we got a few to go through here. But we're going to get to the giveaway here shortly. Really Bites, do you prefer ducks or geese? Ducks. Geese, I'm okay with Canada geese because they're pretty chill, but those white ones, man, they can go straight to hell. They're jerks. Eminent One, thank you. Would you do a thorough review and measure my LCD i4 and provide an EQ with EAPO if I sent it to you? Probably not, only because I actually have an LCD i4 in-house right now that I am in the process of measuring, and providing EQ. So I'm not in the habit of. I know this is a thing that like a lot of folks who have measurement rigs have done in the past, and it's not something I think we should be doing with our measurement rig, because even though in some cases we have done it, but mostly just like the job there is not to measure everybody's individual pair and then give them the, you know, that maybe this is something we would do if we had like an additional like paid service or something like that, but right now it would just end up, it would open up a, you know, a Pandora's box of just folks sending us stuff, you know, send an EQ profile for my specific thing. So yeah, maybe in the future that's something we'll do, but at the moment it would just take out of so much time for you know, making videos and stuff like that, and writing reviews, because I don't know if you guys know, it takes a long time to review stuff, and like and an even longer time to put together the videos. A lot of work goes into it, and so that's when we start doing, you know, a lot of measurements. The measurements as well can take quite a bit of time away from that. So I like doing measurements. I wish I could focus more on that, but you know, we have to kind of bite the bullet somewhere, essentially. And by the way, guys, we're working on a measurement database, so that should be up, you know, sometime soon. I hope sometime this month. But we've already got it. You know, it's already working, and we're relying on actually some folks who are extremely good at this stuff. So yeah, you will see a measurement database soon. Sunpai, thank you. What headphones and amp/DAC combo do you recommend for a budget between $1,000 and $2,000 on your computer with music streaming, mostly R&B, hip hop, jazz, and rock? Those are very different genres. Okay, so if I had a $2,000 budget, what would I get? This is cheating. If I had a $2,000 budget, I would get a Sonko's LAQ XD1, a Kayan IHA6, and then an OG HE6, and then run it balanced off the IHA6. That's what I would do. But the thing is, you can't find those original HE6s are in short, so they're you can only find them on the used market, and they are the price for those is increasingly going up. So if you can find one for around $1,000, I would jump on that, as long as it's in good condition. And that's always a big question mark, is like, you know, how good is the used, you know, headphone, right? But definitely that would give you, in my opinion, the best sound quality under $2,000. As for new headphones, as for new headphones, for those genres, you've got R&B and hip hop and rock in there. So I would almost lean towards Focal Clear and Focal Clear and maybe Rebel Amp and SU9, something like that, or Rebel Amp and again Sonko's LAQ XD1. Trying to think what else would be good there. Oh, ZMFO Tour, and then just get a you know, Modius Magnus stack. But just because the O Tour is more expensive. It's like, yeah, 1,700, I think. Yeah, those would be my picks. I mean, I like the Odyssey LCD X as well, and that's, you can, I think that's only like 1,300. So that's another option there. LCD X with yeah, pick a you know, some combo for a DAC and an amp. That's the thing. The DAC amp stuff doesn't matter as much as the headphones do in most cases. So yeah, again, with an LCD X especially, because those don't really require much power, you can get away with quite a bit less with the LCD X. So yeah, maybe honestly something like a micro black label signature, because it gives you that bass boost function. If you, I guess if you're using with the computer, you can get into EQ pretty easily there too. So then LCDX, yeah, becomes an option, and then yeah, the DAC amp combo doesn't matter as much. You can go with, again, I like the Rebel amp there because it is quite versatile, but it's also quite large. So if that's an issue, then if space is an issue, then maybe that's a reason to not look into that one. But yeah, you could go with that EX5. That's cheap, $350. That gives you money to spare. Elnrick, what's up, man? Good to see you. Which amplifier would you recommend for the viewer of the HD800? Oh, the winner, sorry, of the HD800S, and why is it A90? I'm gonna recommend the Amps and Sound tube amps. I really like those ones. They're very they have a sweetness to it, and a euphony, and a sort of engaging factor for the detail as well. That's just, yeah, it's unlike other tube amps, the ones that I've heard. So yeah, I would recommend one of those. Maybe the Forge would be good there. But I think it would actually be a good case for the 300 ohm one, or the 32 and 300, I think, for the HD100S. But that's pretty expensive stuff, so don't need to go that high. Guys, I want to do the giveaway. I'm just going to get through the super chats here real quick, and then we'll do the giveaway. Kenny, how long would you say is needed to evaluate headphones? Friends don't even finish a song when I show them and would say they're okay. Good question. I think to fully evaluate a headphone, you need to have tons of not tons, but a certain number of comparisons there, and you need to have a reference headphone as well. And so you need to be doing, going back and forth. I think to fully evaluate a headphone, I think it takes at least 2 weeks. If you're just critically listening to one headphone very hard exclusively, you could do it in a week. But typical use case there, I think would be around 2 weeks. And also with different equipment. So no, I don't think you can do that in just one song or first impression. This is a valid criticism of the Harman research, because they only, from my understanding, is they only actually had the different listeners. They didn't have that amount of time with the thing, or to get the tuning to be what they wanted. So in some ways, it's basically an assessment of what people's first impressions will be and how favorable they'll be. I think that's a valid criticism. You do need more time. Man, what the heck? Folks are pinging me. I know somebody was watching the chat or watching the stream. Somebody in the chat was pinging me. Big Boss, thank you. High Resolve, do you plan on doing a Prisma Audio Azul review? I'm interested to hear your take on it. In addition to precogs, I don't know if I'll do a full review, but I might post my impressions up on the forum. The Azul is in the studio right now, because I brought it there because I needed to measure it, and then I hadn't had a chance to measure it yet. So I am going to do some measurements there, and I've done my best to not be as influenced by precogs takes, because the thing that I find is that while we typically agree on the technical aspects, we definitely have different preferences for tuning. Not totally, because we both love the U12T. But for example, he really likes the S8, and I think the S8's tuning is the thing that really holds it back for the stuff that I like. So I'm going to do my best to kind of not be as influenced there. But Precog is the best IEM reviewer, so take his word. Crin's like, wait, what about me? Android as well. It's because Precog is mine. No, I'm just kidding. Joseph, thank you. What are your thoughts on the Shit Magnius and Modius? I haven't heard them. I don't have them, but I love that they've done that. I think that's the balanced DAC amp combo at that price range to beat, probably. in addition to that, the Sonko's LAQXD1 is a great DAC option, balanced DAC option, instead of the Modius. Because if you, I'm not sure if the Modius uses what chip the Modius uses, but in the past they were using AKMs. Now the AKM factory burnt down, as far as I understand, and so it might be more difficult to get that. So I'm not sure what they're doing for the Modius. I should check that. But yeah, I think they're solid for the price there. Probably based on how much power output you get there, it's balanced. But that's a perfect example of a good enough thing. I would probably take that. I would definitely take that over a combo with the A90. So for A90 owners who like the sound of that amplifier, don't listen to me. Just enjoy it, and don't pay attention to what subjectivists on the internet like me are saying about it. I do recommend the Kainai G6 for certain headphones, for like inefficient planars. Not so much low impedance dynamic driver headphones. Alright, just gonna make sure I didn't miss any super chats, guys. But we're gonna do the giveaway here. Alright, guys. I don't have thoughts on the LCD-R yet. I tried to get one in. I don't know if that's going to happen, because they apparently sold out. So there's no reason to send them to reviewers. And there's very little reason to review them. But I really am curious about that one. I would love to hear it. AKM 4493. Depends for how long. I don't know. Yeah, I already said that. I recommend the Kainai G6. It's great for inefficient planars. It's not good for dynamic driver, low impedance, or sensitive headphones. Okay, giveaway time, guys. Giveaway time. Good luck, everyone. Good luck, everyone. I keep looking at the HD8XX and going like, what? Why are they doing that? I haven't heard it, so I can't pass judgment. But I'm just curious what the sort of internal discussions are like about the 8XX when when I see some of the changes that they made there. I think like, not sure that's what needed to be changed. But maybe I'll get a chance to hear it, and maybe I'll love it. We'll see. I'm going to. Could I get a drum roll in the chat, please, guys? We're gonna pick a winner. Let's go, drum roll, guys. There we go. I see one now. Okay, so the winner of the Sennheiser HD800S giveaway which is this headphone. You guys are dying with anticipation. Is Paul C. So congratulations to Paul C. And I can tell right now this person is eligible, so we don't need to do a redraw. Paul C. Congratulations. We will be in touch. We will email you, and thanks to everybody for participating in the giveaway. This was a very big one, actually. Sennheiser HD100S was popular. Paul C., I'm not sure if you're in the chat, Paul C. We will reach out via email with your email address. We already have it, so it's funny. Every time there's a... Yeah, it's actually, I see somebody saying Paul C is actually my secret name. There's always people who sign up afterwards with like the name of the giveaway winner. We already have the email address of the person, so Paul C, congrats. Yeah, we will send you an HD800S. It's not going to be this one, this particular one. It's going to be one of the ones that's new. So yeah, guys, if you didn't win this one, which is most of you, we do giveaways every month. and we're trying to do giveaways every month, or depending on the giveaway, we might do one over a longer period of time, but generally it's every month. And it if you're wondering what the next giveaway is, it doesn't usually flip over right away because I have to still post that up and we need to figure that out. But usually within the first week or so of the next month, we post that giveaway up. Usually in the first week, we post that giveaway up on the headphones.com page, which is headphones.com/pages/giveaways. So if you want to just, pay attention to what we're doing for the giveaways, just refresh that page, in about a week, and we should have a new one up, indicating which one it is that we're doing. The ones that are coming up, I'm not going to spoil it, but I already know what some of them are, and some of them are really exciting. So so stay tuned to the channel, stay tuned to that page, and definitely sign up for the next one as well. And actually, I think I'm going to try and have maybe somebody else on the live stream next time we do it, because, you guys get enough of me as it is. But yeah, thanks to everybody for participating, and we will see you guys in the next video, which should be coming out soon. I have a video coming out tomorrow, which is on a planar, and then we'll have some videos again throughout the early portion of next week, I believe, as well. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.